Not all hours in investment banking are created equal. Some are slow, routine, and forgettable. And then there are the hours where everything just accelerates, you're pulled onto a multi-billion-dollar transaction, and there's no room for mistakes, sleep, or time. During my second year at JP Morgan on a quiet Wednesday night, I was staffed on a deal with one of our largest clients, which at JPM means it's one of the largest companies in the entire world. I was told we had a meeting with the CFO next week and that we needed to put together a presentation and model in 48 hours with zero margins for error to secure a $6 billion deal. And so today I'm going to be pulling back the curtain and showing you what it's like to work on a pressure-filled multi-billion-dollar deal in the highest level of investment banking. Now, before getting started, if you're interested in a career in finance and eventually breaking into private equity, you'll want to check out the PE Investing Certificate program being offered by Wall Street Prep and Wharton. This program is sponsored by top firms like Blackstone, Carlyle, and KKR, and over 8 weeks, you can learn at your own pace through this online course that's taught by Wharton professors, Wall Street Prep's PE program director, and real PE investors, including David Rubenstein, the founder of Carlyle, and Martin Brand, the head of North America Private Equity at Blackstone, who will cover topics like the PE deal process, valuation, how to think like a private equity professional, and more. By completing the program, you also unlock access to the alumni member database, fireside chats with PE investors, and exclusive networking events with the world's top private equity recruiters. This program runs 3 times a year, and be sure to use my code rareliquid to get up to $500 off, and I'll leave information for everything discussed in this video's description. Alright, with that said, let's go into the 48 hours. Everything started off at 7 p.m. when I got an email from my staffer that I was going to work on a sell side for one of our largest clients. And the associate on the deal pulled me aside and asked me what other deals I was working on because given the tight timeline of meeting with the CFO next week, I would need to clear my schedule. And so after that quick meeting, I emailed my teams to let them know that I would need to push some of my work to later next week. Given that there were likely going to be both strategic buyers and financial sponsors involved in the auction process, I was going to need to build comps, a DCF, and LBO for the presentation next week. And given I had never built an LBO except in training before, I spent the rest of the night until 11 p.m. looking at LBO models from previous deals, which are all available in our internal database. I also watched some YouTube videos about LBOs and started lightly building out a structure for the model. And then I headed home for a busy 2 days ahead. The next morning, I got into the office at 9 and after responding to some emails, met with my managing director and my deal team in my MD's office to get a rundown of the deal. There, I learned that there'd be about 10 potential buyers involved in first round bids, learned who the top contenders were, and how we were co-advising on the deal with another bank, which my MD clearly didn't love because it means that you're splitting the deal fees with them. And this also isn't great for junior bankers either because it means we need to compare valuations and analyses with one another, which adds a layer of bureaucracy in a sense. After the meeting, I huddled with my associate who said she'd work on the shell presentation and told me to flesh out the LBO model, which was good that we started it the day before. I started by building out the assumption section by adding dummy numbers for the transaction financials, valuation at entry, and capital structure assumptions. I then built out a sources and uses section, which would help determine the sources of the capital that would be used to fund the deal, which were some assumptions we would need to get from our leverage finance team, and then how all that capital would be used to refinance debt and pay out the equity. Next was building out the operating model to project out the company's revenue and costs, which we would build out 2 cases for, the management case and the conservative case, which would ultimately feed to our net income and levered free cash flow, which would be used for our debt waterfall, which is the schedule that shows how cash flows are used to repay debt over time to determine how quickly the company can delever, which is a key factor in exit calculations and what the potential IRR of the transaction will be. After working on building out the LBO for 2 hours, we received the management model from the client, which is a big Excel sheet with over 20 tabs related to sales, expenses, taxes, and all things related to the company's finances. And my associate and I go through the model for the next 3 hours to understand how the entire Excel model is structured and how all the numbers are flowing. Sometimes client models can be very messy and numbers won't tie, but luckily, given we're working with a really large client, their in-house finance team is on top of everything, and we hop on a 1-hour call with them to discuss some of our questions. Afterwards, it's time to plug in the numbers, so I copy in a few tabs from the management model and plug them into our LBO, in addition to the debt assumptions I've received from our LevFin team for the max amount of total debt, which turns out to be 6 times EBITDA, the amounts for each tranche of debt, and the corresponding interest rates. While building out the model isn't super hard, making sure that every single number I input is 100% correct and double checking everything takes a lot of time. And that's an important tip for all aspiring banking analysts. You only want to send your deliverables to your associate once you think it's perfect. Even if it's likely you've made some mistakes somewhere, you want to think that it's perfect when you're sending it and that you have no errors. After sending over the LBO to my associate for her to check over tomorrow morning, I start working on the trading and transaction comps, which again, aren't hard, but take a while to make sure everything's perfect since we're hand spreading them manually and digging through filings rather than just populating numbers from FactSet. I then send the comps to my associate again for her to check tomorrow morning, and then spend the next 2 hours building out the structure of the DCF with some placeholder dummy numbers for some of the projections, which I need to ask my associate about tomorrow, and then I head home. All right, now next, going into Friday in the morning, I sit with my associate in my cubicle to go through some mistakes she found in my LBO. And you know you have a good associate when even during the heat of a deal, she spends time teaching you how to do things rather than just fixing them without explanations. I also have a list of questions about the DCF that I have prepared, mainly about how to project out our revenue and operating margins, and then we make some tweaks to the numbers that I put in. For the next 3 hours, I finish up cleaning up the LBO and DCF models and also fix a few mistakes on the comps that my associate has sent me. Then I build out the valuation football field, which is a summary page that shows the valuation ranges of the different valuation methodologies. We send out the football field to our MD since he asked for that first, and then as we wait for his comments, I work on the other parts of the presentation, including some stock M&A process pages, a stock chart of the company highlighting the latest news that affect the stock, and then overviews of the potential buyers, all pretty standard stuff. We then get a bunch of questions and comments from our MD related to the football field, including using a larger ranger for multiples for comps to stretch out valuation, being slightly more aggressive with our revenue growth and WACC for a higher valuation for the DCF, and then increasing the entry multiple to push our LBO valuation higher. I make those changes in the models and then create the trading and transaction comp pages, in addition to the DCF and LBO output pages to finish up the entire presentation, and then send it over to my associate who reviews it quickly while I have dinner. My associate sends me some light comments, and then after double checking through everything, I send it to the broader deal team, including my MD and the M&A team, and then head home, and knowing that I'll have to work another 15 to 20 hours over the weekend, get as much rest as I can. So that wraps up the crazy 48 hours for this multi-billion-dollar deal that I worked on. Let me know in the comments if you guys would like me to cover anything else about investment banking. And also in the next screen, you're gonna see a video about all the things I learned in terms of technical financial concepts while I was at JP Morgan. Feel free to check that out if you're interested. That said, thank you all so much as always for watching and hope to catch you in the next video.